In December 1989, the United States invaded Panama to arrest one man. His name was Manuel Noriega, a dictator, drug trafficker, and former CIA asset. America sent 26,000 troops. They deployed stealth aircraft for the first time in combat. They blasted rock music at a Vatican embassy for days, all to capture a single person. This is the story of Operation Just Cause, the strangest American invasion of the 20th century. Subscribe because this story has everything: drugs, dictators, and psychological warfare. Manuel Antonio Noriega was, for many years, America's man in Panama. He rose through the ranks of Panama's military in the 1970s, eventually becoming the chief of military intelligence. He was smart, ruthless, and connected, and he was on the CIA payroll. For years, Noriega provided valuable intelligence to the United States. He reported on Cuban activities in Central America. He helped monitor communist movements throughout the region. He let America use Panama as a staging ground for operations. In return, America looked the other way. They looked the other way when Noriega rigged elections. They looked the other way when political opponents disappeared. They looked the other way when he began facilitating Colombian cocaine shipments through Panama. Noriega was useful, and useful people get forgiven their sins. By 1983, Noriega had become Panama's de facto ruler. He controlled the Panama Defense Forces, the military that ran the country. He installed puppet presidents and removed them at will. He was a dictator in all but name, but he was still useful to America. So the relationship continued. That began to change in the mid-1980s. Noriega's drug connections became too blatant to ignore. Colombian cartels were moving tons of cocaine through Panama with his protection. Money was being laundered through Panamanian banks. The U.S. Senate held hearings. Journalists published exposés. The Reagan administration faced growing pressure to cut ties with its former asset. In 1988, U.S. federal courts took an unprecedented step. They indicted Manuel Noriega on drug trafficking and money laundering charges. It was the first time a sitting head of state had been indicted by American courts. The relationship was over. But removing Noriega wasn't simple. The Reagan administration tried economic pressure. They froze Panamanian assets. They imposed sanctions. They tried to strangle Noriega financially. It didn't work. Noriega had plenty of drug money to fall back on. They tried supporting a coup. In March 1988, Panamanian military officers attempted to overthrow Noriega. The coup failed, and the plotters were executed. They tried diplomatic isolation. Noriega didn't care. He waved a machete at rallies and declared himself the maximum leader of national liberation. Everything America tried, Noriega survived. By the time George H.W. Bush became president in January 1989, the situation was at an impasse. Noriega was still in power. He was still trafficking drugs. He was still thumbing his nose at Washington. And he was growing bolder. In May 1989, Panama held elections. Every independent observer agreed that Guillermo Endara, the opposition candidate, had won decisively. Noriega annulled the results. When Endara's supporters protested, Noriega's thugs attacked them with clubs and pipes. Vice presidential candidate Guillermo Ford was beaten bloody in front of international cameras. The images shocked the world, a presidential candidate covered in blood, attacked by government forces. But still, Bush hesitated to use force. An invasion of Panama would be controversial. It would be criticized internationally. It would set a precedent. Noriega forced his hand. The trigger came in December 1989. On December 15th, Panama's National Assembly, controlled by Noriega, declared that a state of war existed with the United States. They named Noriega the maximum leader with unlimited powers. It was largely symbolic, but it made headlines. The next night, December 16th, an American Marine lieutenant was shot at a Panamanian checkpoint. First Lieutenant Robert Paz was riding in a car with 3 other officers. They got lost near PDF headquarters and encountered a roadblock. When Panamanian soldiers approached the car, Paz's driver panicked and accelerated. The Panamanians opened fire. Paz was hit. He later passed away from his wounds. That same night, a Navy lieutenant and his wife were detained at another checkpoint. They were beaten. According to the lieutenant's testimony, his wife was sexually threatened. Bush had had enough. On December 17th, he signed the order. Operation Just Cause would launch in 3 days. The invasion of Panama was massive. Over 26,000 American troops participated, making it the largest U.S. military operation since Vietnam. Forces included Army Rangers, the 82nd Airborne Division, Navy SEALs, Marines, Delta Force, and conventional infantry. They had air support from AC-130 gunships, AH-64 Apache helicopters, and F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighters, the first combat use of stealth aircraft. The plan called for simultaneous assaults on 27 different targets across Panama. The goal was to decapitate the PDF before they could organize resistance. Age hour was set for 1 a.m. on December 20th, 1989. The assault began with surgical strikes. Delta Force was assigned to rescue an American citizen, Kurt Muse, who was being held in a prison adjacent to PDF headquarters. Using stealth helicopters, they inserted onto the prison roof, broke Muse out of his cell, and extracted him under fire. The operation was a success, but barely. The extraction helicopter was shot down, and the team had to be rescued by an armored column. SEALs were assigned to disable Noriega's personal jet at Paitilla Airport, preventing his escape. The mission went badly wrong. As the SEALs approached the hangar, they were detected by PDF guards. A firefight erupted. The SEALs were pinned down on the open tarmac. 4 SEALs were killed. 8 more were wounded. It was the deadliest SEAL mission since Vietnam. But the main assault was overwhelming. Rangers parachuted onto 2 key airfields, securing them within hours. The 82nd Airborne dropped onto Torrijos International Airport. Marines landed by helicopter at various targets. By dawn, most of Panama City was in American hands. The PDF collapsed faster than anyone expected. Some units fought hard, but most simply melted away. Soldiers changed into civilian clothes and went home. By the end of the first day, the PDF had essentially ceased to exist as an organized force. But there was one problem: they couldn't find Noriega. The dictator had slipped away in the chaos. He wasn't at his headquarters. He wasn't at any of his safe houses. He wasn't anywhere American intelligence had predicted. For days, Delta Force and Special Operations units searched Panama City. They raided dozens of locations. They offered rewards for information. Noriega was a ghost. The search became embarrassing. The world's most powerful military had invaded a country, destroyed its armed forces, and installed a new government, but couldn't find one man. Then, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, Noriega surfaced. He walked into the Vatican embassy and requested asylum. The papal nuncio, the Vatican's diplomatic representative in Panama, granted the request. Under international law, the embassy was sovereign Vatican territory. Noriega was safe. American forces immediately surrounded the embassy. They set up roadblocks. They trained spotlights on the building 24 hours a day. But they couldn't go in. Attacking the Vatican embassy would be an international incident with the Catholic Church. So they tried psychological warfare. Massive speakers were set up around the embassy. At maximum volume, they began playing rock music. Van Halen's Panama, Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle, Billy Idol's Flesh for Fantasy, The Clash's I Fought the Law. Hour after hour, day after day, the music blasted. The official explanation was that the music prevented eavesdroppers from hearing sensitive conversations. The real purpose was obvious: drive Noriega crazy. The papal nuncio complained. The Vatican complained. The music continued. Inside the embassy, Noriega was increasingly isolated. The Vatican made clear they didn't want him there. The Panamanian people were demanding his surrender, and the noise was relentless. On January 3, 1990, after 10 days of rock music, diplomatic pressure, and public protests, Noriega surrendered. He walked out of the embassy in his general's uniform, surrendering to waiting American forces. Manuel Noriega, the maximum leader, the drug-dealing dictator, the former CIA asset, was placed on an aircraft and flown to Miami to face justice. The capture was complete. Noriega was tried in U.S. federal court, the first foreign head of state to face an American jury. The trial lasted 7 months. The evidence was overwhelming: testimony from drug traffickers, financial records, witness after witness describing Noriega's involvement in the cocaine trade. In April 1992, Noriega was convicted on 8 counts of drug trafficking, racketeering, and money laundering. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. The man who had ruled Panama with an iron fist would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Or so it seemed. After serving 17 years in American custody, Noriega was extradited to France in 2010 to face additional money laundering charges. He was convicted and sentenced to 7 years. Then, in 2011, he was extradited to Panama to face murder charges related to the deaths of political opponents during his rule. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years. Manuel Noriega died in a Panamanian prison in 2017. He was 83 years old. The man America had once protected, then hunted, then imprisoned, ended his life in a cell in the country he had once ruled. Panama itself recovered quickly from the invasion. Guillermo Endara, the man who had actually won the 1989 election, was sworn in as president on the night of the invasion. He had been hiding at a U.S. military base, waiting for Noriega to fall. Democracy was restored, elections were held, the economy stabilized. Today, Panama is a prosperous democratic nation. The Panama Canal remains one of the world's most strategic waterways. The country is a regional financial center. Most Panamanians view the invasion with mixed feelings. They're glad Noriega is gone. They appreciate the democracy that followed, but the invasion killed hundreds of their countrymen, mostly civilians caught in crossfire. Estimates of Panamanian civilian casualties vary wildly, from the official U.S. figure of around 200 to human rights groups' estimates of up to 3,000. The truth is probably somewhere in between. But whatever the number, Operation Just Cause came with a cost. What are the lessons of Panama? First, America creates its own enemies. Noriega was our asset for years. We used him, paid him, protected him. When he became inconvenient, we invaded his country to remove him. This pattern repeats throughout American foreign policy. Saddam Hussein, the Shah of Iran. Dozens of Cold War allies turned adversaries. Second, military operations have unintended consequences. The invasion was supposed to be surgical, but parts of Panama City burned. Civilians were caught in crossfire. The collateral damage was significant. Third, capturing leaders doesn't end problems. Removing Noriega didn't end the drug trade. Cocaine still flows through Central America. The cartels simply found new routes. Fourth, some operations succeed despite their flaws. Just Cause had plenty of problems: intelligence failures, coordination issues, higher than expected casualties. But overwhelming force compensated for the mistakes. The cost of Operation Just Cause: 23 American service members lost their lives. Over 300 were wounded. Approximately 300 to 500 Panamanian military personnel were killed, and somewhere between 200 and several thousand civilians. One dictator was removed, one democracy was restored, one drug network was disrupted. The invasion of Panama was the largest American military operation between Vietnam and Desert Storm. It tested doctrine, equipment, and personnel that would be used in Iraq just over a year later. In that sense, Panama was a dress rehearsal, a practice run for the post-Cold War world. It showed that America was willing to use force to remove hostile leaders. It showed that American military power was overwhelming when unleashed. And it showed that even messy operations could be called successes if the ultimate objective was achieved. 26,000 troops, 10 days of rock music, one dictator in handcuffs. This was Operation Just Cause, the strangest invasion in American history. And somehow, it worked. Subscribe for more Cold War military stories. Share this video so Just Cause isn't forgotten. Comment: was the invasion justified? This video is for the men and women who served in Panama. They did an impossible job. They brought a dictator to justice.